By the end of this video, you're going to get three things. The first one is I'm going to give you a system to find exactly what content you should be creating. Second one is I'm going to give you a framework where you can create content in a way that it doesn't disappear into the void but actually helps you build your audience. And the third thing is I'm going to give you a 90-day roadmap which you can literally get started today. A lot of founders, they create content without having a proper plan. They get inspired and they just make different random video, right? And a lot of the time you don't get that much views, and then you try to keep asking yourself, okay, what went wrong? Why am I doing this, right? Well, after this video, you won't be guessing anymore. You will know exactly what went wrong. You will know exactly what you need to be doing. So most founder content fail because of actually one particular reason. Most founders treat content as like a megaphone. They think more output equals more growth, but there's no structure underneath. There's no intention behind what they do. They just make whatever they feel like. So that results in failure because almost all the time they end up creating content for one specific goal, I would say, and that is to get attention. But attention is actually only one of the three jobs that content is supposed to do for you. So one of my favorite frameworks when it comes to creating content is TOFU, MOFU, and BOFU, which means top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom funnel. Most people actually end up going for optimizing their content for top of funnel content, and they forget about middle of funnel and the bottom of funnel. So in this video, we're gonna dive deep into how you can actually use TOFU, MOFU, and BOFU to build your content. So let's get right into it. Like I mentioned before, content needs to do three things. And the first one is obviously to grab attention. So once you do grab that attention, your content actually needs to do two more other things. And the second one is to create trust. And once you get that trust, you need to convert that trust into some sort of an action. So all these three things combined creates a really efficient or a profitable content strategy, I would say. So like I mentioned before, right, this is one of my favorite frameworks when it comes to building content strategies. It's essentially like you have to treat your content like a funnel. So the top funnel is called TOFU, the middle of the funnel is MOFU, and BOFU. So that's basically how it works. So in the first part of this video, we're gonna dive deep into each of these funnel parts, TOFU, MOFU, BOFU, and then figuring out what sort of content can you actually create in that area, like how much of content you should be creating, different things like that. Let's get into TOFU. So top of funnel content, or TOFU, is actually educational content. So this is where you actually educate your audience, and their job is to reach people who don't know you exist. So that's why you're actually educating them, So like when you create educational content and pack them with a lot of value, people will actually resonate with it, and they will like get a better idea of certain subject. It can be whatever you're an expert in. If it's like an AI tool that you know about, if it's Claude skills, Claude code, or anything like that. If you create educational content around it, it belongs to the top funnel. And the job, I'm going to read myself, is to reach people who don't know that you exist yet. And here are some popular content formats that people actually use. So tips. This is something I have seen a lot of people do. They share tips on how you can be a better designer, better video editor. You must have seen so much of this, like people give so much tips on how to be a better prompt engineer, how to write better prompts, how to use Claude. There's so much Claude content being pumped out these days. So similar to that, we have breakdowns, we have how-tos, contrarian takes, and then industry analysis. So in breakdowns, it's not like tips, but it's like you go down one silo of content, if you would. Basically, you break down how some of the things are made. Like, for example, if it's like running an N8N automation, you just give a much detailed breakdown on how you can do it. What I'm doing right now is also like a breakdown content. I'm like breaking down how content is made and then how you can actually grow an audience and build trust. I guess I'm doing two things here with like how-tos as well. Again, how-tos is like tutorial content. So for example, it's a Higgsfield video, and then this is how I made it, and then you show them like this is the image that I made first, this is the prompt that I use, and this is the character that I created, and then these are the different angles I use, and then this is how I made that AI video for Higgsfield. That's a how-to video. The contrarian takes. Actually, these kind of content typically tend to do well too, because it's going away from what people normally believe in. It's the opposite of what a normal person would expect. For example, you're scrolling, and you see 5 videos on Claude can do this, Claude can do that, Claude can do this, and then you see one video where it's like someone is saying Claude sucks. Then you stop and you wonder, like, wait, why is he or she saying that? What's wrong with Claude? And yeah, you're a little bit curious. So contrarian takes actually do well if executed correct. And again, industry analysis. This is also very good. For example, if you're like a stockbroker or a finance person, and then you're trying to break into the industry and show people that you know what you're talking about, you know what's going on in this industry, and then you can actually just make a lot of content like this. For example, let's say you are working in Wall Street, and then let's take Apple's news, right? So Tim Cook is leaving, and then you can talk about how that is going to affect the stock price, how that's going to affect the future predictions. And then I think they released like 20 different new products that they can be working on. So maybe as a person from Wall Street, you can go on a little bit of an analysis saying, okay, because of this, these kind of stocks will also be affected because purchasing products from this stock and they are purchasing products from this. You can dive deep into that entire supply chain and give an analysis for a person who doesn't know anything about that industry. So industry analysis does tend to do well, but you have to make sure that you have some level of authority around that topic, because people are not going to trust you if you aren't from the industry itself. Like if you're just reading off a script out of ChatGPT or something, it's not gonna work because people need to trust you. So like it helps that you work in Wall Street, or it helps that you are from a PE firm. So if you're trying to create industry analysis content, you have to actually come from some sort of position of authority. So in this instance, the viewer doesn't know that they need you yet. They just need information. So they're just looking for the information. They don't know you, and frankly, they might not even care about you, but they like what you're talking about. They just want that information. So this is your widest net. Essentially, this is the content format that you should post the most about. This should be the heavier part of your content strategy, because you're casting a wider net and trying to catch a few people here and there, and then build trust accordingly. But this stage is all about attention. So your objective should be to cast a wider net as possible and reel people in. So what are some success metrics when it comes to this? Shares, new followers, and reach beyond your existing audience. I feel like these are a little bit obvious, but if you see that your reels or your posts are getting a lot of shares, that means you're doing something right. People are talking about it. If you're getting new followers, you're doing something really amazing, because people like your content so much that they want to constantly keep getting it. So followers and subscribers, a really good success metric at this stage. The final one is reach beyond your existing audience. So what I mean here is, if you have 1,000 followers and if your reel gets 10,000 views, that means you have reached beyond your existing audience. Those are what we call outliers in this space. I'll dive deeper into like doing an outlier analysis in this one, but for now, like if someone's post has done, let's say, more than 10x or even 5x compared to their follower count, that's an outlier. Because if all of your posts average like 500 views, assuming you have 1,000 followers, and then one just breaks out and does 10k views, that's viral. A viral post doesn't mean millions of views. It means how many times greater is it compared to your followers or compared to your actual audience. So a new Instagram account with 100 followers gets like 5,000 views on one of the reels. That is a viral post because it surpassed way beyond 10x. That multiple is really high. So you don't need a million views to call a post viral. It's just that you need to cross-check it with your audience. So if your posts are performing well beyond your audience numbers, and even on Instagram, you can see like how many of your viewers are your actual followers and how many are strangers. If all those metrics are ticking and saying that you're reaching beyond your existing audience, that's a good success indicator. All right. So what are some mistakes the founders make at this stage? Thing is, founders try to niche down too early. So making educational content that's too niche too early, if only your existing customers understand the reference, you already lost it at the top of the funnel. So what I mean here is, people say like you have to niche down, you have to, be very specific, and that's true. But at the TOFU stage, you shouldn't be niching down too much, especially too early. Like I mentioned here, this is your widest net. So if you're throwing a very tiny net, which is niched down, the amount of people you reach is very small. And if you're referencing things that only very specific people know, like maybe your customers, maybe your followers, or maybe your audience, like only stuff that they know, your content is very hard to be appreciated by strangers. Because remember, at this stage, nobody knows you and they don't even need you. They just want the information out of you. So if you're like too niche and if you're being selective and you're doing things that are not understood by the mass audience, that is a bit of a mistake that people do. There's so much more views on the table. Instead of like saying you're leaving a lot of money on the table, you're leaving a lot of more views and audience and people on the table by niching down too early. Because if you actually took the time and then properly grew out your audience with a wider net, you might actually end up in a bit of a different niche as well. Because then you discover like, okay, this audience likes this audience likes that. So you can actually figure out what your audience is growing into, and you can adapt. So if you niche down way too early, that could come off as a bit problematic. Just remember this mistake at this stage. So let's move into the next stage, middle of the funnel content, MOFU. This is storytelling fan. So the job of this content is to build trust and emotional connection with people who found you through top of funnel content. So in this stage, this is where we build the trust. This is where we try to show a little bit of personality. So that's why you do like storytelling formats. Basically, this is where you will tell people like, I have done this, I have done this. You will get a better understanding of what I mean here if I went through the content formats. So behind the scenes content. This is very important when you're creating products, even apps, or even, a service-based areas, right? Like people love the story. So if you show them the work that goes behind it, how many hours you spend trying to build something, how many challenges you go through to build that thing, how you struggle, or the small wins and losses you have, those proper raw behind the scenes content, that helps to solidify your story. Those content do really well. And then we have personal lessons. This might not be for people who are like immediately starting off. So this is very good for like industry experts, veterans, people who have gone through the trenches and have some war stories to share. This is a pretty good format for you. Founder journeys. This is another great way where you can, like, as a founder, you can share your journey of building it. So it's a little bit different than BTS, because here you're telling different story. For example, like day one of building this, and then you're showing like it's connected to the past, but more towards like building that trajectory towards the future. So there's a very subtle difference between BTS and founder journeys, but more or less the result is the same. And then we have failures and pivots. So here you actually acknowledge what's going on, like instead of trying to sweep it under the rug, the failures, or silently pivoting, you acknowledge it, you create content about it, you be honest about it. This is why we failed and this is why we're pivoting. That will attract more people. That will actually build trust, because remember, at this stage, building trust is your goal. So all of this helps to build trust and opinion pieces, because people need to essentially trust you. And if they know your opinion, if they know where you stand on a different topic or anything for that matter, that would again further instill more trust in their heads, because they know your beliefs. Sometimes they can even relate to what you're believing. So that again adds up to a trust. So in this one, the viewer knows that you exist now because they came to you through TOFU, through your top of the funnel content, and they actually care about it. So this is where you show your personality and point of view and let that do the heavy lifting. So what are success metrics in this one? Comments, saves, and replies. So I also get a few comments here and there from my YouTube videos like this, and trust me, when you get comments like this, you feel super motivated, even if it's like 5 or 10 people watching the video and then they're like telling you, okay, this is exactly what I need here, your content is amazing. Positive indicators like this, it means you're doing something right. It might not be appealing to the mass audience, but the few people who take the time to watch the content, they're enjoying it. So that's a good success metric. Saves, that means people saved it. People saved your story. They saved a post about your journey, maybe as an inspiration for them. Maybe they want to copy some of your frameworks. And if you get replies, it can be both ways. Like if you did outreach and you get more replies, again, that's a good indicator. But in here, what I'm trying to mean is you post a lot of stories and people are replying to you, relating relating to what you're doing and giving you feedback or like asking you for advice, you know it's working. And when it comes to mistakes that people make at this stage, and it's quite funny, like people actually skip this stage entirely, and it's because they feel like at this stage you're talking too much about yourself and you don't want to do that. So this is a big mistake, and honestly speaking, I can relate to founders who would feel like this as well, because I personally don't like to talk too much about myself online or anywhere to that matter, like, because in the back of my head I feel like, okay, am I just showing off? What would they think? It's a very tough mindset to get out of, because those conversations are what actually creates trust. You might think that, okay, I'm not going to talk about myself, I don't want to show off, or I don't want to appear dumb, or like whatever, it can be a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I don't want to sound stupid in front of an investor or someone big, so I'm just going to keep quiet. I've been there, I've done that. And the people who actually, make a fool of themselves or tell their story, like take everyone's time and they just like, be brave. For me, I would like, okay, maybe I'm taking the time of other people who might have a better question to ask. I'm wasting it by telling my story just to impress this person, so I'm going to keep quiet. People can think like that. But there are people who don't think like that. They just seize the moment. And those investors, they click with those people because they trust them more, because they took the time to share their story. Maybe they even relate to it during their earlier days. So the same happens in content, because even for me right now, like when I'm trying to create content, I have to remind myself that I have to do this in order to actually get you to trust me, just to show you that I can do this and I have done this. So that's why a lot of founders try to skip this stage, and it's actually doing more harm than good, because it's actually the bridge between attention and trust. You cannot go from attention to an ask. You have to have trust in between that makes that ask feasible, I would say. So this stage is very important. It will take some form of bravery for you to go out there and create content like this, but you definitely should, because this is the most important, I would say. Attention is good, but attention is nothing if they don't trust you. So very important. All right, now we are at the last part of the funnel, and that is BOFU, bottom of the funnel. This is authority content. This is where you build your authority. This is where you show people that you know what you're talking about and you can actually solve their problems. So what are the content formats here? Personal frameworks. Maybe it's a little bit similar to what I'm doing right here. I'm doing a super long deep dive into a framework. This is not my personal framework. These are frameworks that I gotten inspired out of, like stuff that I found online and mixed and matched a few random stuff here. So this can be my BOFU, but yeah, personal frameworks. Client results. So this is another thing, like especially for agency owners, people who work with clients on a day-to-day basis. If you can show your results, that's your authority right there. You don't need anything else. Case studies and client results are the same thing, but the way you distribute it is a bit different. Case studies tend to go a bit deeper, and client results are like a little bit more over the top, like quick and easy to digest. Case studies would be something that people can like sit and read and properly go down and understand. So there's a bit of a difference there. And then if your skills can provide a specific outcome that no other person can provide, if you make content around that, that's your authority there again. It can be like how to use some sort of automation tool, how to build the tool, and then how to get it to do a specific function that not many people know about. That's your authority content right there. And then personal transformation stories. So for example, if you have like a weight loss success story, if you're like into fitness and health, and if you had your weight loss journey, this is your personal transformation story. Or if you're someone who is on recovery, like you can share your story, because that's unique to you. No one else can copy that, because it's your own personal transformation story, and that's how you build your authority with your content. So at this stage, the viewer now trusts you, because remember, they came from TOFU, from the attention they got, like you got their attention, and then through the MOFU, by sharing your stories and putting a little bit of personality into it, they trust you now. And this content will give them everything they need to take the next step, which is ideally to purchase a service or a product from you. That's the end goal of all, right? So this is essentially like a proof point. It's not like any promotion or anything, but this is just like further solidifying what trust they already have in you. They trust you, but like there's a tiny bit of doubt in their mind, right? So once they see these content, they're like, sure, they know what they're talking about, like that. So success metrics, the biggest one I found, people asking you, hey, how can I work with you? If you have been posting content, and if you're very fortunate enough to get DMs like this, that means you're doing something super right? You're on the right path, because that means you have been out there enough, you have posted, people have noticed you, and they trust you enough to reach out to you personally to literally give you an opportunity to pay you. So you have built a lot of trust. So that means whatever you're doing is working, just double down on it. Inquiries, I guess it's actually the same thing. I don't know why I put it there, but the last one is conversions. So when it comes to business, you're not just being quiet, because you have to pay the bills. So you cannot just put out content and then hope that people come at you, right? You have to do outreach campaigns, you have to reach out to people, you have to do email marketing, you have to blast out emails, you have to go to different people, maybe on LinkedIn or Instagram, and just DM them and ask, hey, I have this problem, do you guys want to work together? Like anything like that, I can do this, I can do that. You have to keep pitching, right? You have to put yourself out there so that you can essentially afford to pay your bills, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing as founders, right? So conversions is the biggest success metric at this stage, because it tells you that your content is working for you. So instead of a person, approaching you through a cold DM, if you had seen the TOFU content or BOFU content or anything, like if you had like some level of interaction with their content, and if you trust them a bit, if they reach out to you, you are more inclined to work with them, because you have seen their content, you trust them, and then you have seen their case studies, their client results, their proof of work. So you know that they know what they're doing, but maybe you didn't have time to reach out to them. But if they actually reach out to you, there you have it. So you have to keep reaching out. And then if conversions do happen, that's the biggest success metric of all, because it means that your entire funnel is working. So let's dive into some mistakes that people do at this stage. Founder mistakes. Leading with this before trust exists. Authority content without the preceding layers read as bragging and pushes people away. Yes. So what I mean here is people sometimes confuse MOFU and BOFU. They do it the other way around. Instead of building trust first, they try to push out client results. They try to push out case studies. They try to push out their outcomes or personal frameworks or whatever. So that's when people try to think of you as, okay, this guy is very pushy. This guy is very bragging, and then it can rub people off in the wrong way, because they don't trust you right now, but you're just talking about, I did this to this client, we did achieve this. Just think about it, right? Have you seen some people post content saying that, hey, yes, we had this client, we got them $10,000 of sales by just spending $200 on ads, or like $2,000 on ads. So if you saw that post first, you'd be thinking like, can that even be? Like, you spend $200 and you get $10,000 of sales? That's not possible. And maybe this guy's scamming people. Different alarm bells can go on people's head, because they don't know you, they don't trust you, and you're just talking about the results you got. So that's why it's very important to build the trust first. It's very important to focus on obviously the attention part, as well as building that trust. That's why I said that you should never skip that stage, because it's a very huge mistake if you do skip that stage. Trust is very important. It helps convert that attention into an action. So it's not your personal stories that come off as bragging. It's these kind of things that rub people off the wrong way. So keep that in mind. So yeah, I hope you got a better understanding of these three concepts, these three types of content. They're not interchangeable, right? You cannot change them around or anything like that. Like, each one has a specific job at a specific stage. Publishing them randomly is like running sales calls before the prospect knows what you do. And the sequence is very important here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the 70-20-10 rule. First of all, quick shout out to Eva and Caleb. They are amazing creators, and they constantly talk about this specific framework when it comes to creating content plans. So this is something that I essentially took from them and included in this large tutorial video, because this is a framework that I myself use a lot. So do check out their content, amazing content as always. So just want to give that shout out. So 70% of what's already working. So in this one, you have to find outliers. An outlier is essentially something that beats the creator's average. So let's say you are a creator with 1,000 followers and you get an average views of 700 to 800 views per reel, right? And suddenly you get a video that gets 5,000 views or 10,000 views. Now that's an outlier. So essentially how an outlier works is, I would like to look at it in a way that it's like 5 times or 10 times the average. So let's say, again, I have 1,000 views, and then if I spot if a creator creator that I'm trying to dissect has about 2,000 followers, and they have a video that does 20,000 views. That's a 10x return, right? That's like a 10x on the average. So that's a really big outlier. So those kind of things are what I call outliers. So they are not like viral flukes or anything. They're like signals for you to figure out that this is what their audience wants. So you might be asking, right, if it works, like why do they have such low followers? I personally believe like someone needs to hear or see something at least 6 times for them to make a decision. I don't mean all at once, but in like different separate occasions. So like if for someone to even consider following you, I feel like they should randomly come across your content at least 6 times for them to even consider following. You might get lucky and get them on the first one or the second one, but that's what I believe. Like you have to be seen at least 6 times for people to even consider it, because that's something that I have experienced while running ads and getting people to buy products. Like they have to see the product at least 6 or 8 or 9 times to just even consider like making a purchase. So I feel like that translates to following as well, but maybe not as aggressive as 6, because buying a product you have to spend. Here the cost of that person is just a tap of a button, so it's low, but it's good to pretend like they have to see your content 6 times. So you have to keep making really amazing videos overall and consistently, so that you will keep popping up on their feeds. So the only way to do that is to figure out what actually works. So your job is not to understand why it worked, but it's like to make your own version of it. It's good to understand why it works, but if you're doing it, you can get stuck in a quick big loophole. Like if I found a viral video, I can dissect it in like 5 to 10 different ways. Like it can be about color grading, it can be about editing style, it can be about the background music, it can be about the hook, like how they sat down, and like different tiny things. I can micro analyze it and figure out, okay, maybe this is why it went viral. But if you do that, it's gonna cost you a lot, and then some people might just easily just try to copy the entire thing. But I would not recommend that, because ideally if you're copying someone, they're much bigger than you, right? So the chances of people actually knowing them is much higher. So like if you get labeled as a person who just copies other creators, that's not good for you at all. So your job is to make your own version and adapt your own style to these outliers that you spot in different creators in your own niche. So the question to ask is like, okay, what belief, pain or curiosity this piece of content tap into, and what the others didn't do? You can like ask different questions like this and figure out why, and then the answer to that why is essentially your content plan. So to make your job easier, I have found a few tools. I have to say, since these tools are like essentially on YouTube and or like Instagram, I don't know if they specifically violate any terms or not. So I advise you to do your own research. These are just some of the stuff that I have come across online that I feel like can help you out. But again, if you don't want to take any risks or violate any terms, you can do this manually. It just takes a few extra hours. But anyways, so this tool, it will show you YouTube videos which are outliers and which did perform well. And then in this one, you can like sort a person's Instagram feed based on the number of views or the likes or comments. So it's another great way to quickly figure out, okay, what worked well. So these are some of the stuff that you can do if you don't want to find these outliers and stuff manually. So moving to the next one, the 20%. So 70% is what's already working. 20% is double down on what already worked for you, not what worked for others, but what worked for you. So obviously this one, you have to post content. You have to have your own data and then look at where you're performing in your own channel or page. So in this part, you do not reinvent the wheel. You just templatize what you're doing. So it's the same structure, same format, but it can be about a different topic or something else, but keep the core of that video the same. So if it's like a comparison video you did with you on one side and another you on this side, and compare something and that worked out for you, do that. Keep doing that. 20% of that content, just keep doing that. Make it a template and try different things. So in order to do that, you have to properly track your content performance and spot patterns. You have to be good at that. And then you can ask yourself, what was the underlying structure of my best performing content and how do I repeat that? After you have all this data, you just go through it and figure out what was the underlying structure, what's your best performing content, and then how can you essentially repeat that in a templatized way. So it mostly refers to content formats and the way you package your video. So that's something you can reserve for the 20% of the content. And this is my favorite part, the 10%, and that is experimenting. I love to experiment stuff. So if you look at this video, I would say this is essentially part of that 10%, because this is where you're able to take a risk. This is where you're able to try something new and see if your audience likes it or not. This is essentially your creative sandbox. You can try new formats, new angles, new platforms, new styles, anything you want, and you can see if it will work or not. So I can guarantee you most of it won't work, and that's actually the point. I'd be surprised if I got like a one full view in this video, because this is turning out to be a really long video. And if you are still watching, I'm extremely grateful for literally sticking around, so thank you. But that's the thing, right? So it might not work, but that's okay, because this is very experimental. You will learn more from failing than not trying. If you have this idea for a video and if you didn't do it, you might not know if it would have been a viral hit or a miss. You have to try to know if it's a hit or a miss. The thing is, your next 20% content comes from whatever works in this 10%. So let's say this long format video ends up doing really well. That's going to be my next 20%, because while I'm getting inspired from other content creators in the 70%, 20% is what I'm templatizing from what actually worked, right? So in this experiment, if something worked, I will templatize that and continue forward. So the 10% rule, right? It keeps you from experimenting too much and losing consistency. And it also keeps you from experimenting too little and going stale as well. If you don't take risks, you might not grow. So this rule solves the biggest content problem founders have, and that is they either blindly copy other founders and lose their original voice, or they create content purely from instinct and ignore actual data. So having a framework like this, like a 70-20-10 framework, will actually help you be more structured, be more organized, and figure out what's actually working, what people are looking for, do what's already working for you, while doing some experiments that will again convert content that will work for you. So it will essentially keep you on the right track. So having this rules or this framework is actually a great thing, and I think you should definitely start adapting this into your content creation framework or schedule today itself. So all right, so now I'm going to quickly take you through on how you can do a content research deep dive. So the first step is finding outliers in your niche. So the best way to do this is to identify at least 3 to 5 creators in your space. It could be on YouTube or Instagram, and search them by most popular and screenshot or like note down the top 3 outliers from each one. You can use the tools that I mentioned earlier as well. You can use sort feed or any of the tools that you come across. On YouTube, it's actually easier to do it without a tool, because you can just sort it by most popular and you will get the highest one with the most views. So in YouTube, you actually don't need a tool. You can just spot it yourself. But Instagram, you might want a tool. You just have to figure out what works for that particular creator and then just note them down, or just open up a note tab and just copy paste the links or put it on Excel sheet, whatever works for you. So you're essentially looking for videos that have significantly more views than the creator's average. Not their most recent, their most proportionally successful videos. These are what I called outliers earlier. So if you have 1,000 subscribers, you're essentially looking for a video that did way more than 1,000 views, at least 5 to 10x. So build a simple list of 10 to 15 outliers, like pieces of content as examples. Once you do that, step 2 is you have to figure out why they worked. So for each outlier, we can ask the following 4 questions. What specific emotion did this title trigger? Was it like curiosity? Was it fear? Was it fear of missing out, or like some sort of a validation? And then if it's YouTube, you can just figure out what does this thumbnail promise. If it's Instagram, you can dive deep into the hook that was there, because doom scrolling is the hook that gets you in, but on YouTube it's the thumbnail that makes you click. And you can figure out what beliefs does it essentially challenge or confirm, and who specifically is it for. The more specific, the better it usually performs. So like some people try to put different taglines, like here's how a $5,000 a month agency can grow to 10,000. So that way that person instantly removes all the $1,000 a month agency from their specific about who they target. So it works better for them, because people who are making more than 5,000 and less than maybe 10 or 15,000 will want to watch that and improve their systems. And that's exactly their target market, because maybe there are services like $500 or $1,000 a month or so. So they need to figure out and filter out the people who cannot afford them and get the people who can in. So when you are specific, your content usually works better. Even if you have a low view count in the future, you might actually get more conversions. So once you analyze why they work, you go into the comments of the top performing videos and you copy the exact phrases that people use to describe the problem. And I don't mean copy the description, the caption, or anything that the content creator you are analyzing put out. I'm telling you to copy the exact phrases that people in the comment section use. Essentially, people who are describing their problem, because more or less, like especially in the context of business, a video talks about how to either solve a problem or highlights a problem or something related to a problem or a solution. So there might be people asking specific questions about a certain issue in the comment section. I want you to copy that exact phrase. Don't paraphrase it, use the exact phrase, because these phrases actually end up becoming your titles, your hooks, and your thumbnails. Because right now you're not doing keyword research, right? You're not looking up at keywords, but you're doing language research. So there's a big difference there. Keyword research is what people searching for, but language research is what people are actually using, are talking about. So when your hooks use the same language that a person is talking about, it quickly resonates with them. If your thumbnails, your text, everything has the same language, they're more likely to open your videos and click. So use these 3 steps and try to build a huge database on maybe 5 creators. You don't have to go crazy and do like 100 creators or whatever. If you want, that's amazing, but 5 is more than enough for you to get started with like a 90-day content plan. Like I said, use the 70-20-10 rule, and you can split it across educational, storytelling, and authority content. If you're a new account, I recommend you go heavy on educational, because if you come out as a very authoritative figure, people might not relate. So you just go light on authority, heavy on educational, and put a little bit of stories here and there in between so that people will associate you with who you are and relate to your story essentially. And when it comes to the weekly rhythm, I recommend that you go with one core idea in a week, and then you can just divide it up into different content pillars or whatever. Because essentially what I do is, again, like I do a main video per week, and then I divide that into different shorts as well as different text pieces, and then post it across my socials. So you couldn't do something similar, because I'm trying to do content in a very light way so that I can manage all the other projects that I have going on. So it's very hard to make content your life, and as a founder, I agree, right? So you have to figure out a way where you can include all of this into your life and without making it like a huge burden. Because let's face it, in the end of the day, everyone has to become a content creator at this day and age, especially if you're in the B2B space or even direct to consumer, if you're like selling a software or literally anything, right? Trust is very important, and the easiest way to build trust is to put a face behind a brand or a product. So yeah, we're gonna have to become content creators. So let's do it in a way that it doesn't obstruct or make our life a living hell. So this is something that I like to follow. So content pillars, you can have 3 to 4 recurring pockets of content. So when I mean a content pillar, it can actually be sub niches. So if you're in the health and beauty space, maybe some of them can be like about makeup, some of them can be about outfits, different styles, like you can have sub niches, and those can essentially be your content pillars where you like talk about. And when it comes to platforms, YouTube is great for authority and discovery, and LinkedIn is a great platform to build relationships and post like middle of the funnel content. Twitter is great for TOFU or like top of the funnel content, and then I think newsletters is great for bottom of the funnel, because people spend a lot of time reading. Nowadays a lot of people just quickly skim through, but like if people actually take time to read your content, you can actually convince them very well, and that can be like your bottom of the funnel where you convert them to paying clients. So these platforms can differ from person to person and depend on what you're selling, but again, you have to experiment and figure out what works for you. So this is like another columns in an Excel sheet where you can actually use. So I like to plan weekly, so you can put like week 1, and this is the topic, and this is the type, and this is where I'm going to post it, and this it's in this sub niche or this content pillar, and you can track if you had posted it or if you had edited it or if you had to shoot it, like whatever works for you. This is just a simple framework. You just have to make something that works for you, and that's something that's so easy for you that essentially doesn't feel like work. This is the best way to do it. So if you plan by week, if you take like that's 4 weeks a month, a 90-day content plan is essentially 12 weeks. So you have to just figure out 12 main topics. So you don't have to figure out 90 topics. You just have to figure out 12 main topics, and then slowly divide that into different bits and pieces where you fit it in different parts of the day. And once you actually divide it up like that, it's suddenly not a lot of work, just maybe like an hour or two a day. Insights that nobody talks about. So the 70-20-10 rule only works if your research is honest. So if you're lying in the research and if you're just half-assing it or giving it to somebody else, okay, you can give it to someone else, but the thing is, if you don't do it yourself, and if you're the one who's essentially recording and doing the content, like, you will have a much better understanding if you actually sit down and do the research process yourself. You might not have the time, but then do a better job at understanding what that outsourced person or a team may help do the research, right? So you have a better job at understanding, okay, what's this, what worked, what didn't work, right? Because if your research is not honest, I mean, your data is wrong. Like, if it's not honest, essentially that means your data is wrong. That means you're putting all this time and effort and creating content based on wrong assumptions and data. So your research needs to be honest. And most founders research content and unconsciously look for permissions to make what they already wanted to make. So this is another interesting thing. I'm guilty of this too, right? So I wanted to make this long video and I convinced myself, okay, this is great. Is it really great? I'm not sure yet because I haven't posted it. But the thing is, like, when I'm looking at other stats, I try to forcibly look at stats that I want and say, okay, wait, this guy only has 100 subscribers, but his video did 1,000 views and it's like a 1 hour long video. Okay, that's good enough for me. I'm going to make a 1 hour long video. That's what I might have done. So even for you, you might subconsciously be doing things like figure out or like to convince yourself that this is great. So that's something that you have to essentially use hard. So real research means being willing to find out what you want to create isn't what your audience needs. So it's like a hard pill to swallow, you know, because sometimes what you're inspired to create is not what your audience wants. So you can make it, but you might not get views. And the founders who build audience aren't better creators, they are better listeners. It's like I said, right? If you're building content that nobody wants to see, you're not going to grow fast. It's simple as that. Like, if you listen really well, like, if people listen to their customers or their clients, they actually do better when it comes to iterating their products as well. So be a better listener. Your content strategy is a reflection of how well you understand your audience's actual pain. So if your content is performing really well, that means you have understood, you have listened well, and then you're actually solving a person's problem really well. And if your content isn't growing, it's not an algorithm problem, it's a listening problem. So all these 3 points basically tell you it's really important that you listen to your audience. If you're not listening to your audience, it's actually pointless, because social listening is a huge thing. And I mean, there are different tools you can use to do social listening, but the easiest way to do is to listen to your audience. And it doesn't mean going through every single comment, but views, that's likes, impressions, all those are metrics, right? Those metrics shows how your audience reacts to you. Like, it's not just listening to what they say, but how they react for other people's content, for your content, and so on. So like, basically look at all this data and essentially pretend that these are your consumers talking to you. Like, if you have 100 views and if someone else has a similar video and they have like 1,000 views, that means your consumers are essentially, without telling you, but actually telling you that your video sucks. So you have to take it like that. You just have to be very observant, very data-driven, and listen to your audience. And trust me, you will come up with great content, and hopefully I can listen to you and continue to make great content. So this will wrap up the slideshow presentation part. So I hope this was great. But if you guys actually need me to send this Canva file, I can put it to like a proper Google PDF or something and just share it. Just let me know in the comments. So yeah, we have come to the end of this video, and I'm just gonna leave the video with a quote, and it's that, like, the best content strategy isn't the most creative one, but rather it's the most honest answer to what your audience is struggling with the most. So just want to leave you with that thought. I did this video in a slightly different way. We really dove deeper into this topic. So if you like this type of content, please leave your thoughts, like, subscribe, and hopefully we can create more content like this. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.